Hi, I'm Gina Brown with Rogers TV, and this is Gander International Airport, located in the town of Gander, a place where history, diversity, and aviation intersect. As described by the previous mayor of Gander, the town was built because of this airport. And the fact that this airport exists is remarkable, really, when you consider that in 1935, a decision was made to build what was then the largest airport in the world for a war that hadn't started, to promote transatlantic air travel for planes that didn't exist. Strategically located, bridging North America and Europe made Gander a natural aviation gateway. In its heyday, this airport was a crossroads of the world. But Gander's significance extends well beyond its geographical location. It's a place where diversity flourishes, where people from around the world, different cultures, races, and creeds have been welcomed, sought opportunities, and new lives. Unfortunately, Gander has also seen its fair share of tragedies. The Sabina Airlines crash of 1946, the Czech crash of 1967, and the deadliest accident to occur on Canadian soil, the Aero Air crash of 1985, which resulted in the loss of 248 U.S. Army personnel and 8 crew. Maybe it's because of all of these factors, Gander's unique aviation history, its blend of cultures, and its empathy and understanding of tragedy, which contributed to an unparalleled response when called upon in the wake of the U.S. terror attacks of 9/11, when thousands of plain people unexpectedly descended on this small town and surrounding areas for 5 days. It's said that for the thousands who came here and the thousands who received them, each person has a story to tell. Tonight, we tell our story of what took place here and the vital role of our local community television station, Rogers TV, during those chaotic days. Rogers TV captured those days on film, preserving it for history, and also for the years that followed, contributed to a continuing legacy. Take a look back through our eyes with never-before-seen footage. This is Through Our Lens, a 9/12 story.
The first I heard, we were sitting at Tim Hortons having coffee, and someone came in and said, "Did you hear there was a plane just crashed in New York?" Well, no, we hadn't. And all the first thoughts was, well, how big a plane? Where did it crash to? Because nobody seemed to know at that time until when someone said that there was a second plane and it crashed into the Twin Towers. Wow, so that was huge because, I mean, you can imagine, the Twin Towers in New York and downtown New York, a big busy place, and all we could think about was casualties, how big it was. And I didn't realize the magnitude of it until I got a call from the town manager saying that the United States is under a terrorist attack and the US is going to shut down their airspace, and Canada has agreed to take all the planes that's in the air until they straighten out and see, how widespread this is. Well, knowing our location and our airport, and we knew that we would be getting aircraft. I mean, once you leave Europe in the morning, once you get halfway across, the nearest airport is Gander. And every airplane was told to land at the nearest airport. And at the end of the day, we ended up with 38 planes and almost 7,000 people. First, when the planes got here and everything to land, we were operating hour by hour because they were only going to be here for a little while. We somehow got word from one of the hotels that one of the airlines was calling, trying to book their passengers in the hotel. So we sort of said, well, if somebody is trying to book in, this is going to be longer. But shortly after that, we heard that, this was not going to happen overnight. And that's when we put the emergency center together at the town hall and put everything in place. So the first few hours was just hour by hour. And then all of a sudden we said, we got the word that people were going to come off the planes and stay. And all of a sudden we said, wow, we got 7,000 people at the airport, and we got 9,000 people in town. What are we going to do? And that's when the magnitude hit you. What do you do with those 7,000 people? and where do you put them to? Where do you feed them and all that? And the length of time that people stayed aboard the planes gave us the opportunity to prepare, and everything worked out, and logistics and everything, before the first crowd came off the plane. So it was a hectic few hours, you know, trying to get everything organized, but you know, with the help of people. And there's one thing Gander was noted for, and probably still is today. If you need your people, you can count on them, and they'll be there to help. And I mean, with the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, all the organizations that came forward to help, it certainly made our job a lot easier. All we had to do was figure out the logistics. Rogers certainly played a major role in getting information out to the people. And I mean, everywhere where people stayed in the shelters had Rogers TV. And, you know, they could see and hear everything. So, yeah, they played a major role. And would say, okay, we got to get this over to Rogers and get it out so people could hear it.
This is, of course, a live update due to some very adverse circumstances in the town of Gander. This is, of course, disaster relief time. We still have thousands of people stranded in our area due to terrorism activities in the United States, specifically Washington and New York some 3 days ago. Efforts are underway right now to accommodate and specifically to feed these people. The supper time meal is now underway through the services of the Salvation Army.
In 2001, Rogers TV was pretty new in Gander, having recently purchased the local cable station. Priding itself on providing a voice for the community in which it serves, Rogers TV creates local programming with the assistance of staff and volunteers. The role and value of this station and the conviction and commitment of the people within it, they were tested and exemplified in the days that followed 9/11.
In September of 2001, I was a brand new volunteer. I was less than a year as a volunteer, and I was really excited to see, you know, what professional TV was all about. I worked in smaller community channels and things, and as a volunteer and stuff. But this was the first opportunity to work in that role, and I think back then it was very limited technology, and cell phones and things like that weren't as common as they are today. So Rogers TV back then played, I think, an even more crucial role within the community, and to make sure that the community, you know, knew what was going on in the community.
And that's what community TV is about, and that's something that you don't lose, you know, because in order to get something out in the community, it has to be community-based. And Rogers, too, had a lot of volunteers. I mean, it wasn't all employees. It was volunteers who gave up their time and basically stayed there, too, 24 hours around the clock to make sure that everything was out. So, I mean, we can't forget it. Sometimes, you know, we take things for granted. Okay, Rogers is there. We're going to do it. But it's times like that when you realize just how valuable they are to the community.
The very first thing that I remember about that day was walking into my house, and the news was on, and it wasn't long after the actual plane had first hit. So I came in, and I was captivated by the images of the second plane going into the second trade center. And so I was like, I mean, it just like, that was it. My day was just like, and at that time I had no concept of what that meant for Gander or anything. It was just like, this is major news. You know, it was all kinds of speculation, all kinds of stuff, and all that kind of stuff. So it was very much I guess a gut-wrenching feeling. It was very much like, wow, what is going on, right? And I can remember going up to the station. Like I said, I was a fairly new volunteer, and I was talking to our manager, Brian Tremlett, at the time. And the one thing about community TV is that we often tried to make sure if there was news on the go, if there's something on the go, we wanted to be part of it. We wanted to cover it. But I can remember myself and Brian getting in the van and going up to the airport, and we got some great footage of all of the cars going back and forth. And for me, like, you know, this was an amazing moment. Like I couldn't believe all of the traffic and all the things. This is a little small town, you know, like we're not used to all this traffic. And then you look out on the airport, you see all these planes, and it's like, it's just so surreal. It's like, wow. Like, I mean, and at that point, of course, we had no concept of how many planes there were. We had no concept of how many people were actually coming. This was so early on. It was like we've seen all these planes, and we had no concept of how long it would be. We were just thinking, okay, they're on the planes, they're going to be here, 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, and boom, they're going to fly off. So we were thinking, this is the only footage that we're going to get. This is all that there's going to be at this point, right? I mean, Brian did a masterful job, I think, that week of managing the situation, because there must have been so many demands on him, because at that time, from a standpoint of TV, we were the source for the community. And so people were looking to us to find out what was going on. They wanted to know, okay, what's happening in our community? What's going on here? And I think there was a sense of obligation at that point that, yeah, we need to share this. And Brian Trimlett decided, okay, let's do an update show so we can show to people what's going on.
For now, we'll turn our cameras to the streets yesterday afternoon. We'll take a look at the comments of some of our new guests here in town.
Hi, we're Mary Pat and Glenn Cincerbrox from Tucson, Arizona.
Hey, Gander, I'm Steve Levine from Dallas, Texas.
I'm Kathy Waddle from Kansas City.
Hi, I'm Barbara Nesbitt. I'm from Austin, Texas.
I'm Randy Harmon from Santa Fe, New Mexico.
And I'm Pat McKenzie from Kansas City.
Yeah, we're from near London, Hertfordshire.
Well, I'm from France, and I'm going to Austin, Texas, and I love Screech.
Et mon nom c'est Florence et Laetitia. On vient de Paris.
My name is Craig Neal. I'm from, I'm originally from Gary, Indiana.
Hi, I'm Bobby Douglas, and I'm from Euless, Texas.
I'm Susan Collada and Ted Collada from Tucson, Arizona.
So we are passengers from Paris to Dallas.
Hi there, Alan Liddell from Glasgow. Here with my wife, Christine, and my daughter, Amy.
Hi, I'm Peggy Webb. I'm from Houston, Texas.
My name is Marty Muir. I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Hi, I'm Cathy Torres-Adopec. I'm from France.
Well, we currently live in Dallas.
Et la famille Taïeb, nous sommes, on fait partie d'un groupe des Galeries Lafayette.
Hi, I'm Glenda Flowers. I'm from Euless, Texas.
My name is Florence Manolis, and I live in Chicago.
And I am originally from Spain, but I live in Dallas.
We are coming from Paris.
Okay, my name is Kim. I'm from Austin, Texas.
I'm Sandy Sachs, and I'm from San Diego. And we just want you guys to come and visit us so we can reciprocate in just a little way for everything you've done for us. Thank you.
We covered these people when they were walking down the street, and we asked them several different questions, and we let them talk, and we aired that so people could see what these people were thinking about Gander, and there was a lot of positive comments about Gander, and we let the people in Gander see those things.
We've had nothing but wonderful experience here. People have been fabulous.
I just wanted to give a warm hello to Gander, and thank you so much for your hospitality, the Knights of Columbus Hall.
Everybody has been wonderful, and we are very grateful to the population.
I had a really, really good time. And I want to thank everybody from the town. They've been really helpful and really nice with all of us.
The Masons have been fantastic. They've been feeding us. We've had a place to stay. They brought in blankets. And better than that, everybody's been phenomenal. The best part of our trip, which was a long vacation in Europe, was our stay in Gander. And I can say that honestly.
I want to say thank you to everybody in this town and in this country.
So I think that the people in this village have been absolutely fantastic. They have taken wonderful care of us, and we are very, very, very grateful to everybody.
And the people are real nice, I can't believe it, Everybody put their arms around you, and there's always food coming in all the time.
So you're well fed?
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup. That's wonderful. We will come back to Gander because we love the people and the place.
Had a fabulous time in Gander. People have been fantastic. Very, very warm welcome.
No, it's incredible how generous and how friendly and just downright nice everyone has been here.
This town could not be nicer. I've been so impressed with everyone, from the people at the airport down to the people who have provided us with the places to stay, taken us into their homes.
It's been wonderful, and I just want to say thank you to all the people of Gander and tell you how much I really, really appreciated being here.
Yeah, I've never seen a town like this. I will now be moving to a small town.
Excellent. In Newfoundland. In Newfoundland. It's just well to do it right. Thank you. Safe trip back home. All the best.
It was a blessing that we had the ice on, because there was a provincial hockey school tournament here. Normally in September you wouldn't have the ice on, but it was at that time, and it worked out great because we turned it into a refrigerator. You know, once the state of emergency was declared, the rink then was used to store all the food on the ice surface.
A lot of our volunteers were working people, and they were working most of the time. Now, I had the luxury that I was able to have some free time. Another one of our great volunteers, Rob Brown, was you know, he was available quite a bit, and so we found ourselves during the day just coming here and saying, okay, what do we want to do? You know, we heard about the largest freezer in Newfoundland. You know, community center was being turned into a freezer, and we heard about that. So off we go. Myself and Rob, off we go. I take a camera, Rob takes the mic, and we went out and interviewed Kevin Waterman. He was the director at the time of Recreation, and he basically gave us the background of what was going on there, and then we were able to take that and show it to the community.
Okay, but it seems we're here in the world's biggest fridge.
That's right, Rob. It's unbelievable the amount of support and donations that are coming in, not only from Gander and the Gander residents, but the region from all over Central. It's just fantastic. It's unbelievable, actually.
I can only imagine the undertaking it must be to organize such a massive food drive, I guess is what this is. How much food are we looking at here?
Well, it's hard to tell because it's coming and going on a regular basis. The major accommodation sites now, as the day wears on, are pulling in, taking out as the stuff is unloaded. We've got tractor trailers, as you can hear in the background there now, unloading stuff too as well. So it's the type of thing of getting the food into an area, coordinating the location of it on the floor, and then as the people come and pick it up, we can then make sure they get the exact food items that they need at the various sites. So and that stretches from, at this point in time, from Glenwood to Gamble and Louisbourg, those areas.
And the Salvation Army, they went in and they took control of the food. So if every place where people stayed, they brought their menu for the day to the community center. The Salvation Army would put the food together, then it would be trucked by volunteers from the community center down to Gander Academy, to College of the North Atlantic, to the Pentecost Church, or to the Salvation Army, the Hanging Indian, wherever there was people staying. And that food was sent out, and they did that for 5 days. And I think they coordinated something like 285,000 meals over 5 days.
People were still continuing to work. There was a lot of things that were just going on normal in Gander, even though there was all these people around. Most people were still working, so to come home in the evening and flick on Rogers and be able to see, you know, oh, there's a freezer up there that's, you know, like they're bringing food from all over the province. They're bringing food into here, and we got no place to put it, so we're putting it on the ice rink. Like that was an important thing that we were able to do, and so that's the kind of stuff that we did.
I think the day that I really found that was the day I drove down Airport Boulevard, and it was a beautiful day, and all the telephones were outside, and to see the thousands of people line up on Airport Boulevard, you realize that this is a bigger magnitude than you thought, because if you went to the Legion, you might have seen 80 people. You know, you went somewhere else, you might have seen 150 people at the College of the North Atlantic, or you could have seen 400 or 500 at Gander Academy. But all of a sudden, when you see everybody gathering around, there's a lot of people here.
You know, there were times that I took the camera and just went on and just took some shots of people walking around, or people sitting outside of a school, or within the school, and different things like that. I remember when they set up a bank of phones down here, and again, myself and Rob, off we go down here to do some interviews with people, because if you think about it, very few had cell phones. So they came to a little place called Gander. They were living in schools where they didn't necessarily have access to anything like phones. They had all of this stuff going on around the world that they weren't sure about. There were some people that actually lost loved ones in New York at the time, but there were other people that, you know, they just wanted to contact somebody, maybe they're from England, and they just wanted to contact somebody back in England to let them know that, listen, we're okay. We're here in Gander, we're okay.
Okay, we're here with Fred Ivany at Newtel Communications, where there's a lot of people making some long-anticipated phone calls, I would assume. Fred, just tell us a little bit about what's going on here today.
We recognized fairly early this morning that the number of payphones, of course, that we have in Gander is certainly not designed and sized for the kind of capacity that we need at this time, the number of people that have come into the community. The size of Gander is actually doubled. So we took it upon ourselves this morning to set up these telephones so that people could make international calls to to everywhere. We've had people here calling to all continents in the world.
The folks have responded so wonderfully. Nothing but love. I mean, we want for almost nothing. The basic stuff has already been provided for us. We simply have to wait out the process, and then we get to the point.
We look at it today and we say, like, that seems like so archaic compared to how we have advanced in technology. But it wasn't. That's the way it was then, and it was so important for these people, you know, to communicate back home. And I was going out with the camera one day, and I went over to the academy, and it wasn't like this wasn't long after people had debarked from the plane, and so they were being put up and stuff. And so and think about it, they were on planes, you know, some were on planes over 24 hours, not knowing what went on. So some of them came out, and first thing they wanted to know was what was going on. So I remember going over to the academy, and I did some film outside the academy, but when I went inside the academy, I remember walking in there, and there was a TV that was on. I wasn't rolling the camera, and I looked at the TV, and it was the footage of 9/11. It was the footage of the trade towers being hit. So as I walked, you know, as I walked over, like it was just people mingling around. As I walked over, I noticed this elderly lady, and she was sitting there, and you know, I was just going about my normal routine. I was going to do some video and stuff, and she was just sitting there. And as I could see the trade towers, and then I could see her crying. You know, she was seeing this probably for the very first time. You know, it might have been like 2 days later, but here she was seeing it. We had sort of, because we've been watching it on TV, we've been home. You know, it wasn't new to us, right? We were just going about our normal things. But for her, and I don't know, I don't know if she knew somebody there, if she was concerned about a loved one, or if it was just an emotion from the standpoint of seeing such a dramatic event. But like that stood out to me, like it, and I never filmed her, but I can still see her sitting by herself and just looking at the TV, and you know, it was a pretty emotional moment, right? So yeah.
And Dennis O'Rourke, their son, you know, was a firefighter in New York, and they couldn't get hold to him, and you know, they were trying to reach him, only to find out when he got home that he died in Tower 2, and you know that. So that was very emotional. There was a lot of people that was crying, trying to get hold to their loved ones and couldn't get it, and the people of Gander had to be a rock for the 6,000 or 7,000 people that was there. We couldn't get too much emotionally involved and start crying with them. They needed our shoulders to cry on, and we had to make sure that we were there to guide them through this.
We didn't know them from anybody else. Like, I mean, I saw so many people there that were just going on vacation somewhere. You know, they were from England or from other parts of the world. They were just going on vacation. They had nothing connecting, no connection at all. And they looked at what we were doing here as, you know, our generosity and stuff, but they were happy. They were glad to be helped and all that. But I know that there were a lot of hurting people here that I think that as Ganderites, you know, whether we knew it or not, is like, I didn't realize I was interacting with that lady like I was until I actually walked on the scene and seen her, and I can't remember shedding any tears myself at that time, but I know it impacted me. So, and I think that's what Ganderites felt at that time. We felt that compassion, we felt that connection, and we felt that, you know, we wanted to reach out and support them and help them in whatever way that we could.
But it was a very emotional time, there's no question, because a part of you was thinking, what kind of world are they going to go back to in the United States? You know, a lot of Americans, they were concerned. They were saying, am I going to be safe in my country anymore? You know, and all those things going through their minds, and not being able to get hold to your loved ones had to be a terrifying experience. There's no question. But you know, we went through it with them. And you know, there was tears shed by a lot of people, you know, but we managed to get through it. And the passengers never demanded too much from us. They accepted what was given to them. They weren't the type to say, well, I don't want that, I want something else. So if something was presented to them in food, if they didn't like it, they would say, well, what do you like? And then, you know, they got something else. But for most part, you know, they just accepted the kindness and generosity and went away with certainly a different outlook on humanity than what they had when they landed there. They weren't allowed only take their carry-ons, that's all. And a lot of people never had much of that. You know, they weren't allowed to get access to their luggage or anything. So they were just walking out, you know, with nothing.
You know, I remember talking to somebody after they had gone to Walmart and they had a brand new shirt. And so they were all excited about this shirt, right? Look what I got, right? And, you know, they're basically, you know, joyful. And they're basically, you know, excited about being able to change their clothes, right? And so I don't think much luggage was taken off the plane. You know, someone might have had a carry-on and stuff. So you think about even a change of clothes. So seeing that, like, that stands out in my mind. I mean, I can remember the day that we set up the camera right here in front of our building. And Brian Moser just was interviewing people as they were coming by. It was just like wall-to-wall people. You know, we weren't standing there waiting for somebody to walk by. I mean, they were walking by, and as we were interviewing, there was others walking by, and you can see in the footage, you know, there's people walking on both sides of the street. I mean, this place was covered with people. Like, it was just amazing how many people were walking up and down the street. When I did interview passengers, or when I did interview anybody, yeah, you could feel that they appreciated it. You could feel that they appreciated what you know, what you were doing and the contribution you were making, and yeah, and I know, like, I mean, based on my years of experience now, like, I know, yeah, there was a lot of appreciation that was shown towards Rogers TV and what we were doing at that time. I got no doubt. So I think Gander stepped up, and it looks like a very, you know, collaborative effort, but I think you can find examples of people stepping up in need, and you know, all around the world, because I think when we lose sight of ourselves and see others, I think we have the ability to step up and help others. I think that's a part of who we are. That's a part of our humanity. And yes, there are people that wouldn't step up to save anybody, but I think for the majority of us, that when we see somebody out there that's in need, is like seeing somebody drowning, and your desire is to go and save that person out of the water. You just step up, and I think that's what we felt that week. I think we saw that week on a huge scale.
You probably can't think of anywhere in Gander where somebody wasn't doing something for those 4 or 5 days. And it was a lot of people that made all this happen. It wasn't just 8 or 10 people. You know, all your service clubs, you had all your churches and their congregations volunteering. And we had a lot of people that just took people in. I say, if you ask everybody in Gander that lived there at that time, probably one or the other, I mean, did something. Because if you go up to your church in the evening, you see all your congregation there volunteering. You know, no matter what church you went in, if you went in the Lions Club, all the Lions Club members were there. If you went in the Knights of Columbus, all of them were 24 hours around the clock. The schools, the teachers, everybody, you know, volunteering, and even students, you know, we can't forget them. You know, the grade 12 students up to Gander Collegiate at the time, hey, they could have had 5 days off, but guess what? A lot of them went back and volunteered and helped, you know.
I don't think there was any organization within a radius of Gander that was not involved, and I think it spread far beyond that. So it was a huge, huge group effort, and it's amazing. I mean, when you see the magnitude of what it is, and you look back at it and you see the magnitude of how people stepped up, it's like, wow, yeah, it was you know, it was phenomenal.
Trying to conquer languages and everything, it was just crazy. 95 countries is, you know, a lot of countries. You know, it was a good thing. A lot of the passengers helped with language. We have a lot of teachers and doctors in Gander that could speak, you know, different languages. So I don't know, I look back at it now and say, it's amazing that we had everything here that was needed. You know, just imagine you had nobody here could speak, and you had 50 people that couldn't speak English, and we had nobody to be able to respond to them. It would be terrible. But it just seems that everything fell into place. I think there was a divine intervention that made sure that, you know, everything was going to work fine. And it was a hectic 5 days. It was a rewarding 5 days, but also a very sad day for the world. There's no question about it. And I think when the people left and went home, one of the things that hurt us the most, we knew that if we could keep them here, they'd be safe. But we also knew they had to go back home.
Like, I remember hearing they're getting ready to leave, different ones are leaving, people are going to the airport to leave. I think we were just almost relieved for them. We're sort of like thinking, yeah, it's great now that they're able to go home and they're able to go back to their loved ones and stuff like that there. And I don't know if there was any time, like, I can't remember it at any point. I think we were anxious to get back to normal life. You know, Monday came and people went back to normal work. I don't know when it hit. I don't know if it really hit that they're gone, or that you know, like what I felt at that time is almost like, okay, let's just get back to normal, right? I don't know if I really connected with the emotional part of it. Probably not until after it was over. I think it was like you're just running on adrenaline. You're just, you know, you're just out doing the things that you know to do, and you're comfortable doing it. You enjoy doing it.
After everybody was gone is when our emotions came out. I think when we looked at everything and sat back, and I think there was a lot of tears shed after that. But, you know, there's all kinds of stories. I mean, a lot of personal stories that people had, you know, in Gander. But it was a very emotional time, there's no question. I was asked in Australia in November, is Gander unique? And would this happen anywhere else in Newfoundland other than Gander? And the answer very quickly was yes. If you land anywhere in Newfoundland and Labrador, you would get the same treatment that you got in Gander. So I said, if a cruise ship ended up in Tullagate, I'm sure that if they had to take off 1,200 people, they'd be looked after by the people in Tullagate and surrounding area. Same as what the plane people were looked after here in Gander. So it's not unique, it's the Newfoundland and Labrador way, regardless of where you're to.
That we, the people of Gander, welcome you here today for this special commemorative tribute regarding the events surrounding September 11th, 2001.
But I think on September 11th, 2001, we saw the worst act of mankind. But in the days to follow, in Gander, Newfoundland, in Lewisport, Appleton, Glenwood, Norris's Arm, and all across this great country, we saw the best of mankind.
I have made a lot of friendships, received letters from people that I have never met, and made a host of media friends, too many to mention. Little did I think that a tray of sandwiches 10 years ago would produce so many lasting friendships.
We were starting our 8th season of Skyways that year. And as we were starting our season, we saw that. We saw that that commemorating 9/11, it's going to be a huge thing, and we want to be part of it. And I think from there, it just started taking on a life of its own, and we just started doing things that we knew to do.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Skyways in our 8th season here on Rogers TV. Well, over the last week here in Gander, like the rest of the world, we've had a chance to reflect and think about what happened on 9/11 10 years ago. In the United States, acts of terrorism resulted in the death of approximately 3,000 people in New York, Washington, and Pennsylvania. And while we here watched what was happening, little did we realize that here in Gander, almost 40 transatlantic flights with their 6,500 passengers from 93 countries would be forced to land in our backyard. In the midst of the recent remembrance of the tragic loss of life 10 years ago, Gander's response in caring for our stranded visitors during that difficult time has been the focus of international attention. Why us here in Gander? Well, maybe Charles Dickens summarized it best. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
By the time the 10th anniversary rolled around, I had changed my role from being a volunteer to now being station manager. We saw this as an opportunity for us to highlight again what Gander was doing and the different things. And I don't think at that time, you know, we even really thought about beyond, you know, just a commemoration. You know, Gander was used to commemorating the Arrow Air crash, for example. So we were used to every year having a commemoration service. For this, it was more like, you know, we weren't quite sure what this was going to be, but we just wanted to be part of it. I don't think Gina and I really, you know, looked at it as saying, okay, this is going to be a big, huge thing. You know, as a matter of fact, when they had the actual commemoration service on the actual day of the 11th, you know, I took one camera and went over and I filmed it. It's just a normal commemoration service. We made no more effort than that, just to, okay, let's get this on tape. And then there was also, they did a breakfast on the Saturday before, on the 10th. And again, we went over and just, let's get some interviews. Let's get some interviews of people. And we had no idea of the significance of some of these interviews. Like Gina interviewed Beverly Bass.
Probably my main concern was caring for my passengers and getting my airplane somehow from Gander to Dallas, which was ultimately our final destination. And every day we thought we were going to be able to leave, and every day we would find out we weren't leaving. So by that time, the passengers had become pretty familiar to me. Every day I would go to the Knights of Columbus Lodge and brief them 2 or 3 times on, you know, what was happening.
Beverly, I'm sure even her at that point had no idea that she would become a star. Her name would be synonymous with, you know, with the events of 9/11 and things. I'm sure, you know, we certainly didn't know. We just interviewed her. We interviewed a bunch of people. We interviewed, you know, Kevin Turf and different things. Like, we interviewed a bunch of these people and had no idea of the significance of any of this stuff. So we were just going into it and doing this thing. One of the interviews that we did, I think, is very significant. We actually probably did the very first interview with David Ein and Irene Sankoff. We probably did the very first interview with them before there was ever such a thing as Come From Away. And I can remember walking up to the interview, and Brian Moser actually did the interview, and I remember walking up to the interview, and as normal, you know, normally what I would do is and again, you know, thinking back to the actual events in 9/11, I was on camera, and here, even though I was station manager, I was still, you know, using the camera, and as normal, I would hit the record button as I was walking up to a guest, because I wanted to get whatever information we can get, and so as we were walking up to the guests, and you'll have to see it to appreciate it, you know, Brian walks up to David and Irene, and you'll see what happens here.
Brian Moser, Rogers Television. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I understand you were with the stranded passengers.
No, we weren't.
Oh, I thought you were.
No.
Someone tell. So what brings you here?
Guys. My wife and I are playwrights. We got a Canada Council grant to come out here and research. So we're actually we're on the media side.
Oh, no, you're with us.
Yeah,
no.
we are.
False alarm.
Sorry.
Say hi anyway.
Still important. Still important.
So you can see that at that very point, we had, again, thinking about the significance of what we were doing, we had no idea of the significance of what was going to go on in the future. And so Brian came back to me after I cut the camera. Brian came back to me and said, "Well, you know, we're not going to bother him." I said, "Yeah, let's go interview him anyway." So we went back, and then we did this interview.
I'm going to ask you very quickly, because I know you've got a great breakfast here in front of you. What brings you to Gander on this occasion?
Well, we're playwrights. My wife and I are playwrights, and we're out here collecting stories about 9/11, about Gander, about the community, and it's been really wonderful.
And of course, obviously, you're getting a lot of material because there's like 1 million stories around this event.
There's so many stories. We were at the Gander Academy yesterday, and the nice folks there talked to us for 2.5 hours. We could write a play just based on there, you know.
And so when can we look forward to seeing the play that you're writing?
Well, we're working towards a workshop in April next year, so we're crossing our fingers. We've got so much material. I think the real challenge is going to be cutting it down rather than you know, figuring out which stories to tell.
I can imagine. And when of course, I got to talk to your good wife as well. Yeah, what are your impressions when you look at the town of Gander 10 years after the event and seeing all this taking place? And of course, the event is building. How does this make you feel?
I guess proud to be Canadian, and just amazed at the generosity of the people who were here, and it's just been lovely to hear how it's changed everybody for the better. I wanted to find out a little bit about how the people of Gander changed as well, and they talked to us yesterday about how they even began to see each other differently and more self-awareness of who they were and who they were as a nation.
Guys, thank you very much. All the best with the play, but for right now, enjoy that great breakfast. And there's 3 seconds.
Oh, great.
Enjoy. Thank you. All the best.
What you just witnessed then was probably the reason why Rogers TV, or Rogers Television at the time, was made part of the Come From Away experience. Because us walking up to David and Irene was a real fluke on our part. We had no idea who they were. Us interviewing them as a community channel, as local TV, and then Brian subsequent getting to know David and Irene, this was probably the moment. And this moment has never been shown on TV before until tonight. This moment has never been shown. As a matter of fact, just to tell you how insignificant we thought that moment was, we did up 2 shows. A show with a bunch of interviews here, 28 minutes, and then we did up a second show, 28 minutes. The interview with David and Irene did not make either of those shows. That's how insignificant we thought about that interview. Yet that interview is probably the pivot point, is probably the point where Rogers Television became part of this come from away phenomenon, because there's no other explanation for it.
Yeah, we were in Victoria last week for the closing of the North American tour of Come From Away. I attended a couple of shows there. It was sold out. Actually, they had to put on 2 extra shows after the closing date to accommodate the people that really wanted to go. So I think they could have stayed there probably another 4 or 5 nights selling out. It was just amazing. I mean, the people that want to hear the story, it's not only across the United States, but even in Canada, you know, people want to hear about what happened here during 9/11. I go back to Michael Rubinoff out of Sheridan College in Toronto. When he heard about this story, he had a vision that he could do something with it.
I think we've been living with this show for 5 years now, and I had always wanted to, you know, I think to go back to the beginning, I think when I read about what was happening here on 9/11, which of course was such a tragic day for the world, and then to read in Gander, Newfoundland, the opening of the hearts and the homes here, you know, as Canadians, our patriotism is a little more quiet and polite. And I read about what was going on in this part of the world, and I was so proud to be a Canadian. I think that's a rare feeling, that, you know, this feeling of, you know, those people are one of me in terms of shared values, shared country. And as being a producer, I'm always thinking of chronicling history through musical theater. I believe I say if you did tested the DNA of Newfoundlanders, I think you'd see music notes in the strands of DNA, so much a part of who you are. It's part of life, it's part of culture, it's part of storytelling. And I always believe that this, telling this story through a musical form was just a perfect match. So, and also with that, we just wanted to honor the people of this town, the integrity, just the outpouring of what they did, and did so well, and did in very challenging circumstances. We wanted to tell that story and share it with the world.
And he had to pick the right people to do the story. He got turned down on several occasions. People said, you know, it'll never work. But he found this young couple, David and Irene, this husband and wife team, and they were the ones. You know, I think they got a government grant. They came to Gander and interviewed everybody.
And they went away and came back and said, we think we want to do this. We want to take this on. We think this is right. And what was so perfect about them, they've got hearts of gold. They're real people. They work hard. They deeply care. And they said, if we're going to do this, we got to come to Gander. And they came here on the 10th anniversary. And we would check in. It's so fascinating. We would phone each other. We would check in every couple of days. I'd be, how's it going in Gander? And they're like, we moved out of the hotel. We've been invited to stay in someone's house. And they're going on vacation. We have to take care of their cats. And we were taken out for dinner by these people. And I was just, oh my gosh. And they came back after a month being here with all of these stories about what happened.
And myself included, I think a lot of people, when they went away, said, those poor kids, what are they up against? I mean, there's nothing going to happen from this. How do you make a musical out of sandwiches and blankets and that? But they were very talented, and you know, they put it together. So I think a lot of the credit has to go to Michael Rubinoff, who really seen what could be done with this story here in Gander and surrounding communities.
From my point of view, it was a very local production. Somebody had an idea and they were doing it, and I didn't even realize Rogers Television was part of it on the beginning. I listened to an interview with David and Irene after, and they talk about how they wanted to try this thing as far away from the East Coast as they possibly could, and so that they would get honest reactions. And so they tried in San Diego, and then they tried in Seattle. But I started to hear more about this Come From Away show in Seattle being sold out. And to be honest, I can't remember the first time hearing that Rogers was part of it, that Rogers Television was part of it. I can't remember, you know, the first time that sort of registered that, wow, Rogers TV is actually on stage. But I know that there was a point where we learned that Rogers is on the stage. One of the characters is Rogers Television.
I'm reporting live from Newfoundland for BBC, CBC, CTV,
Al Jazeera. For Rogers TV, I'm Janice Mosher. On September 11th, 2011, the town is again filled with Come From Aways. On the 10th anniversary from around the world, we welcome back the Play People.
The character of Janice Moser is so interesting. It's a conglomeration of two people that we know very well in the Rogers world. Even though Janice wasn't working with Rogers at the time, she was working with the newspaper in town. She was working with the Gander Beacon. She subsequently came on and she volunteered with Rogers quite a bit, and she actually worked with us, and she worked with Gina Brown closely for a couple of years leading up to the 10th anniversary. And so Janice was very much part of the Rogers family, even though she's portrayed in the role as a Beacon in that conglomerate of Janice Moser. And of course, Brian Moser was a volunteer with us, but he also physically worked with us as well. So both of these characters are really Rogers TV, and I like to say, like, even though they carry the name of Janice Moser, to me that character more personifies Gina Brown, because Gina Brown to me was, even though Gina Brown wasn't physically part of the 9/11 experience with Rogers, she was part of everything from 2003 right on up through. So every interview that we did, everything that we did with Come From Away, with all of the commemorations, everything that we did, she did interviews with Michael Rubinoff. You know, she did all of these interviews about all of these things. So to me, it's three people. You know, to me, yes, it's Janice and it's Brian, but it's also Gina Brown, because I think that's the I think that's the personality that's there, and I'm the cameraman.
I came back with the scholarship money we raised, now worth over $1 million.
I bring out the Irish whiskey and we have ourselves a toast.
Nick and I just couldn't make the long-distance relationship work.
So I moved to Texas, and then I proposed.
And we honeymooned in Newfoundland.
If you recall the first show they did, the first one, they had about 2 scenes left when they were doing this Welcome to the Rock and stuff, and people stood up and started clapping. They had to stop, and they had to wait, and then they had to continue because people continued to stay on their feet clapping, and they finished the last 2 with everybody clapping, and that don't happen on anywhere else. Everything is wait till it's all over. But the people here were so impressed with it. They stood on the feet, and you could see they had a job to finish it because most of them were crying. They were so overwhelmed with to see 1,500 people in the stadium stood to their feet, just clapping for the story that they're telling, right?
We just got done with the show, and we're still processing what happened. Like, what happened in there was crazy.
The crowd alone.
Unbelievable. I could feel them. It was like an actual, you could feel it. And I could feel the pride, and I was so proud of the cast because we just wanted to make all of you proud, and tell your story. And it was just a beautiful communal thing. It was just extraordinary. I'm still like shaken a little bit because it was just so emotional.
And every audience we've ever done this show for
in the other incarnations of the show have felt this way, but this was exponentially more loving and generous, and the excitement was electric in that room.
When they started singing "I'm an Islander,"
I know, right from the beginning.
Oh, right from, and it just took off from there. And when they finished with it, that was it. That was people were just. I mean, you look at it, everybody was standing up, and it was just unbelievable, clapping to the music.
Always ever wanted. We wanted to bring it back to Gander. We wanted to write a show that made people proud to be Newfoundlanders, to be proud to have been here and to do what they did, and to say thank you for that. And so when people started clapping when we started singing "I'm an Islander," it was amazing.
Yeah. At the beginning.
At the very beginning. And then by the end, in the middle, at the start of our last number, audiences don't normally stand up until the end of the show. And everyone stood up. 3,000 people stood up in the hockey arena and started clapping along. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I think that David and Irene captured what happened, and they wanted, they weren't looking to add drama to it. They just wanted this real story to get out, and I think they did a good job on that. After I saw the show a couple of times, I was so proud to be the mayor of the community with so much compassion and so much love. I remember at one of the Come From Away shows in New York, and I met this young guy. He was about 20 years old, and he was from the United States, and he said, "I want to thank you for what you did for my American people." He said, looked after them. And then he said, "I was so intrigued by the story." But he said, "My dad was on Flight 93 that crashed in Pennsylvania, and he was killed." I don't know if I could have done what he done at 20 years old if it was my dad, And it was gut-wrenching. It was, what do you say? What do you do? We're here celebrating. We just finished, 112 minutes of everybody being so happy at what a group of people did. And he's watching that, and in the midst of that, he lost his dad through that tragedy, but he loved that show. And he wanted to personally thank me, to thank the people for what they did. And that said a lot about that young fellow.
The 15th anniversary, we had a contingent from New York that came up and visited, and so Gina and I spent a lot of time doing interviews with them, and I think the 15th anniversary gave us an all new appreciation for the people of New York, because the people that we interviewed, a lot of them were actually involved on one way or another with the actual catastrophe. And so we all of a sudden had a brand new appreciation. It wasn't just a Gander thing. There were so many people that were impacted, and when they made their visit here, they were impacted by what we felt.
I was at my desk across the street from One World Trade. I was 8:46 when the first plane hit. I felt it and I heard it, but I didn't know what it was. My older sister called me and told me it was a little plane, an accident. Well, okay. When the second plane hit 17 minutes later, I didn't even know it. So I had no idea until my sister called me and said, "You need to get out. This is not good." We walked uptown north, and when the South Tower collapsed at 9:59, I was so far away from downtown that I didn't even know what happened. So yeah, not all heroes wear uniforms. Sometimes they're just your big sister.
When I arrived on the scene of that devastation, I could not believe in my 29 years of service with the New York City Police Department. That was the most horrendous crime scene I've ever seen in my life.
We thought my husband died on 9/11, and we planned his funeral, and he showed up 9/12. My husband is sick from 9/11 toxins, and I know my story is going to change. It's going to be a different 9/11 story. And when that happens, I'll honor him. But until then, we live for those who have died. We honor those who have died, because that's our responsibility.
We both have illnesses from 9/11. And we have to just carry on from there.
I'm happy, all of you, this entire town. I can't, it's like we're in another world. We are actually in another realm. I can't explain it. But I do know when I get back home and I do my tours, I'm telling people they need to come here. They need to come here because it's, oh my God, it's just a very healing thing.
We got to thank you guys for all the sacrifices that you guys made. You have no idea the effect that you created to the rest of the people in the world, especially in New York. And I want to thank you for that.
And I think that's what we do as a Rogers TV station. That's what we do every day. When we go out, when our volunteers go out, when our volunteers give up their time, they're stepping up, they're putting themselves aside to let others shine, to give them a moment in the spotlight, to give them an opportunity to be on TV, to be seen, to be heard, and we give voice to them. And I think that's what I take from this. I look back now and I see the huge impact that it has had on my life. When I see neighbor helping neighbor, when I see what we are capable of, I feel that that has transformed my life. And I feel that when I've been a manager almost 20 years with Rogers TV, and I feel that I bring that sort of legacy to what I do. I mean, I want Rogers TV to be able to reach out and help tell somebody's story. I want it to be able to reach out and hurt with that person that's hurting. I want Rogers TV to be able to reach out and celebrate with that person that's celebrating. I want Rogers TV to be able to not be in the forefront, to put its own needs in the background, and to put the needs of our community in the forefront. That's what I see. I see Rogers TV as being that mechanism, that it's there to tell the stories of the community. It's there to tell the hurts and the victories of those that are around us. And case in point, like when we talked with those New Yorkers that came up to visit us on the 15th anniversary, being able to tell their stories to our community so that our community could see how they impacted these people. Like, that's what we do. And I think that came from 9/11. That came from seeing how we just stepped up and reached out.
I think the legacy is going to be about kindness, generosity, love, and compassion. That's what it's going to. That's the legacy that's going to be left, and that's the legacy that's not left very often. But that's the one that's going to be left from this part of the world: is the love and compassion of people. On the first day, we have 7,000 strangers. On the third day, we had 7,000 friends. And on the fifth day, we lost 7,000 family members. It was like you had lost members of your family because you became so close to those people. They become part of you. They were part of your life for 5 days.
If you were to boil down those 5 days into one word, I'm going to put you on the spot now. What would that word be?
Amazing.
Love, maybe? I think, love your neighbor as yourself. Like, love is really what it is. Like when you forget your own self and focus on someone else, it's a form of love. That's what love is when when you don't look at you, but you look at others. And I think, like at that time there was a lot of love. I mean, you wouldn't classify it in some ways that people would talk about love, but it was a selfless act towards others. So I think, yeah, if you were to classify as, it was an act of love. It was love.
If you have a comment about this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now